We will turn it over to Dan now.
Okay, thanks for coming. Just in case you didn't realize, we're going to be talking about lathes today. And first I want to show you a couple of books here that I'm using. The material I'm talking about today typically comes from these books. I think I've seen this book out here on the bookshelf. I looked the other night and I didn't see it out there, but there's also a companion DVD for it. It's Keith Rowley Foundation course. He's in England. And we have another one, Mike Darlow, his Fundamentals of Woodturning. He gets very technical into details. And then if you're interested in bowl turning, David Ellsworth. This is a very good book. And there's also a companion DVD for this. I told Heather about it the other day. I don't know if it's out there yet or not. I haven't checked this shelf, see if it's there or not. But those are the three books that are really good. And the material I'm talking about today typically come out of those books. Okay, what we have in front of us here is a lathe. Is that the way? And you see we got three different choices. We got a small jet lathe over here that doesn't have variable speed. We got a Delta MIDI lathe over here that does have variable speed, and then a little bit larger lathe, a jet lathe that has variable speed also. And the components of the lathe is you have the bed, and what the bed does is it provides support and keeps everything else in alignment. And on top of the bed, then we have the headstock, and in this case, the headstock is separate from the bed, and it's got a locking lever here. You can slide it down the ways. On the mini lathes, the headstock is actually incorporated into the framework or the bed. Contained in the headstock is we have a spindle. And the spindle has a Morris taper for this type of fixture or other things that you can make and buy. It also has a threaded for chucks or faceplate. Over on this end is a hand wheel for manually turning the spindle. And then inside, see, here, we can look on the camera here. Inside the headstock is an array of pulleys, which allows you to change the speed. On the variable speed one, it allows you to change a speed range. So we've got three different speed ranges here where we can go from the low speed, we can go from the 250 to 700, middle range is 600 to 1800, and the high speed range is 1350 to 4000. Whereas on this lathe over here, since it's not, that has two pulleys for different speed ranges. There are three. This one has two, and over here, since this one is not variable speed, it has six pulleys. And to get you have specific speeds. You have 500, 840, 1240, 1800, 2630, and 3975. So you don't necessarily have the exact speed you want, and it's just more cumbersome to have to change the speeds, because when you put a piece of wood on there that's not balanced, you need to start out the slow speed, and then as you get it balanced, you bring it up to a higher speed. Well, you got the variable speed, you can just crank it up into the whatever speed you want. With that one, you got to change the pulley on it. So it's a very functional lathe that do everything you need to do for small stuff, but the variable speed adds so much more to it that I think it's worth the extra cost to have the variable speed.
What's the big advantage in having?
Well, when you're making a bowl, the rim of the bowl is over here, so you got to come over here like this to come down inside the bowl. Well, you can slide the headstock down here, put the tool rest down here, and you can work on it down here. Okay, then we have see anything else? Oh, well, in the headstock we have, you aren't going to be able to see this on the camera, but there's a spindle lock here that I can lock, if I need to take something off, like release that chuck, but it doesn't stay in. You have to hold it in. So it's could be better, but that's the spindle lock. And then this one also has indexing. There's pins here. There's holes in this wheel here that you can position the piece at various positions for fluting and drilling specific holes that around the location. Like say if you want to do a clock face, you could set up a jig with a router or a drill bit down here, something, and then you could position it around and stop it in 12 unique locations where you could accurately drill the holes or number holes or whatever for your clock face. Well, on this lathe over here, we have what people think is a spindle lock. It'll stop the spindle from turning, but that pin goes into this aluminum wheel here. And if you use that as a spindle lock, you'll wallow out those holes in there and you'll no longer have accurate indexing. So that is not a spindle lock, that's an indexing pin. The spindle lock on this lathe is you put the knockout bar in the hole there, and that's your spindle lock on this lathe. If you need to go the other way, just bring the tool rest around here and lock it over on that side. So that is not an indexing, or not a spindle lock there. And I think this one over here, I think this one actually is called a spindle lock on this one. I don't think this one has indexing, but that is the spindle lock on that one. Then of course we have the speed control, emergency on and off, and a forward and reverse. This one also has forward and reverse. That one does not have forward and reverse. And the thing you'd want, the benefit of having a forward and reverse, of course you're going to be turning forward if you're standing on this side of the lathe. You could stand over there and put it in reverse and do the same thing. But when you're sanding, oftentimes you'll get, if you turn the material in reverse when you're sanding, when you're cutting, even if you've got a very sharp tool, the fibers have a tendency to lay over a bit, and they'll get laid over and burnished down. Well, when you're sanding, if you do it in reverse, it'll pick those fibers back up and cut them off. So a lot of people put the lathe in reverse to do the sanding. I think that's it on that. Okay, then we have a tailstock. Tailstock also has a Morse taper for putting typically the same size Morse taper is in the headstock. One exception is the big one-way lathes. They've got a number 3 Morse taper down here for some reason and a number 2 Morse taper here, but typically you got the same size Morse taper. There's a number 1 Morse taper, which is a smaller a shaft. This is number 2, and then number 3, of course, is bigger than that. But you have a Morse taper in here. You have a hand wheel to allow you to position the quill. Oh, sorry, this is the quill. The part that moves back and forth is the quill. And this is just the hand wheel to position the quill back and forth. And then this is the tailstock locking lever. We're not going to go back that far anyway. Tailstock locking lever, and that you bring the tailstock up like the coarse adjustment, lock it down, and then this would be your fine adjustment to latch the drive center, the live center into your piece.
What is index? You mentioned indexing. What is indexing?
Well, if you're doing fluting, there's pictures in here. Of course, here's a picture here. Say you want to do something like that, where you got horizontal things going. You put index. You fix the spindle in a particular location. Then you have a router jig or something up here, or a table over here, some way to hold a router or something on it. Then you can cut these horizontal grooves on the side of your piece. That's called fluting. And then down here's a bowl that the inlaid drilled holes. Well, you could use the indexing for that to position the bowl in specific locations to get those holes drilled in accurate locations. And here's an example, shows up here where they got an attachment they made a block of wood to fits in the tool post here, and they got a hole for a drill bit to go through it, and that's how they drilled the holes for this bowl down here.
So that button on that one over there would hold that in place while you did it.
Yeah, but you're not putting torque on it. You're just holding it in position. You don't want to use that and then try to get your thing unlocked from the threads here, because you'd damage those indexing holes. Okay, the tool rest. Now, some books refer to this as a banjo. Another place, the book's called a saddle. But the owner's manual of this lathe and that lathe just calls it the tool rest base. So we have this is the tool rest locking. That allows us to position the tool rest in and out and laterally and lock it down. And then here's a locking screw. Then we can set the tool rest and lock the tool rest down. We can set it at whatever angle we want. But this is the lock to lock the height of the tool rest. And then this is the tool rest that comes with this lathe, the big honking tool rest that I've never found any use for, because most of my stuff could easily be turned on that lathe, but that's the tool rest that comes with that. And then when you have the mini lathe, they typically come with a couple tool rests. You have a 6-inch tool rest, and then I guess probably about a 10-inch tool rest. Those are things that come with the lathe. Oh, and then there's also a knockout bar. If this is in the if you've got applied pressure to that, you're not going to be able to get it out. So the lathe comes with a knockout bar. The spindle is hollow inside, and you can just tap out the your device. Now this over here, there's a pin in here that it's called an extractor pin. When you crank it back out, it hits that extractor pin and it automatically ejects out of the thing. But if it sometimes, if you got a device that doesn't have quite as long a tail on it, it's not long enough to go back and hit that self-ejecting pin, that the tailstock is also hollow, that you can come in with your knockout bar and knock it out like that. Okay, lathe accessories. This is a type of dry spur that comes with typically comes with a lathe. It's a four-prong spur. And in order to use that, you need to bang it into your piece of wood. And when you do bang it in, you don't want to hit it with a metal hammer. You want to use a wooden or I don't know what they call that. It's got the shot. Dead blow hammer. That's what you would use to bang that in. You need to bang that in to get that seated down in the wood. And then they also come with some sort of, and I don't know how long ago. No, when I was in shop class, that was a few years ago in high school. They had it was called a dead center, and a dead center is a center that does not revolve. It would have been something like this. Typically it would have been smaller, but this is a solid piece of steel with a pin in the center. Well, that's what you would have had back then to go in the tailstock, would have been a center like that, and you'd put beeswax in this cup for lubrication. Well, I don't know how many years ago they started, live centers became prominent where this is a solid piece here, and then there's a bearing, so it allows it to spin. That's called a live center. So your lathes nowadays typically come with a live center like that. And then there's also it comes with a faceplate. This is a plate that screws onto your spindle, and it has screw holes here to you can come in from the back. It's got countersunk holes in there. You can put your block of wood on there. You actually put your turning piece on there and screw it down and use that to hold, like if you want to make a bowl. You could screw it down to there, or you could screw a waste piece on there and then glue your bowl material or double-sided tape, whatever, to that waste block. But that's the way you can turn a bowl without having to have a chuck. And then this is called since this lathe has reverse, if you turn in reverse, there's always a chance that those threads you're turning in reverse and putting pressure on it, could actually spin off the lathe. Well, this has a set screw in there that you can lock it down back here behind the threads so that when you run it in reverse, it won't unthread, it won't spin off. So if you got a reversing lathe and you get a faceplate, or a chuck, that matter, you want to buy one. Some of the chucks have those set screws also, so you can run it in reverse. Okay, and the tool rest that that comes with the lathe is just, I guess it's a, you know, I don't know if it's cast iron or what, but it's a relatively soft material. And if you're using a tool that has sharp edges on it, you'll get nicks in your tool rest. And you have to take a file and dress that occasionally, because if there's any nicks on there, when you're sliding the tool across, you want it to slide smoothly. So you have to come up with a file and get rid of all those nicks on that type of tool rest. There's other tool rests that I use are made by Robust. This has a hardened steel rod across the top, and it will not nick. So that's my choice of tool rest that I use. Okay, any questions so far on what we covered on the lathe?
I have one.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about costs at all. I want to ask
About the lathe themselves, or you accessories, or
you,
what?
say that I wanted a lathe for gentle turning in my basement. I'm not, you know, I'm not going to, that's not going to be my hobby. I'm going to use it to make drawer pulls or stuff.
Okay.
Like that.
Well, this lathe would be the least expensive of what's in here.
Well, my real question is, I can't afford the Lamborghini, but I don't want the car with $700,000.
You can go down to Harbor Freight and buy a lathe for $150.
Is it any good?
Well, that's the problem.
I don't want to.
You're going to get. The problem is when you buy a lathe, you're getting exactly what you pay for.
So I buy something like this.
You're getting exactly what you pay for when you buy a lathe.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I made a mistake being new going to Harbor Freight first. So I got the big lathe. Now, they don't know how to measure. For example, I needed a smaller tool rest. Their 1 inch is smaller than an inch. So a tool rest you buy here won't even fit in their 1 inch, even though it's an inch. And they don't sell the replacement parts either. They say call support or something. So I wound up buying a Jet, and my Harbor Freight is just for buffing wheels and nothing else.
And that's not a bad thing either. You know, it's not, like I say, I started out with the Delta lathe, and then I went up to this one. I got my buffing system set up on the Delta lathe, so I don't have to continually change stuff around. My buffy's over there. I want to buff something that's already set up. Okay, then as Ken said, there's accessories you have to go along with it. You can't just buy a lathe and look at it. You got to use it. So. The next, behind the lathe, the next most important thing is a way to sharpen your tools. You know, typically, it's a low-speed 8-inch grinder, and then the little platforms that come with the grinders are typically very small. They're not really very useful for sharpening lathe tools. So you need some sort of a sharpening system to go with it. This is a one-way system, one-way Wolverine, which a lot of people say is the best you can get. You just feel the smoothness of how this works, and the tilting the platform and how smooth it works. That's one way. This one over here is Penn State. And I think if you look out here on the shelf, there's Brown's Best labeled product now, and it only looks, I think it's the same thing, it's just painted black. But you can just come up here and feel it and see the difference in how this stuff slides in and out, the latching mechanism, and you get what you pay for. You know, so you need some way to sharpen your tools, because even if you buy a new tool, it's not ready to use. You have to you might even have to shape it to get the proper profile on the tool that you want to use, but you're continually sharpening the tool, especially if you're working on some rare, very abrasive woods. You're continually going back to the grinder and resharpening, putting the edge back on the tool.
How fast do the grinders run? 17?
Well, there's low speed. This one is 17. Well, it says 2,000 and 3,400. But I think its slow speed is typically 17. I think this is a low-speed grinder that I think this is the one that came from Woodcraft, and I think it's 1725.
So as a novice, which would you recommend, the slow speed?
Well, yeah, you want to use slow speed. Your high speed is you just take too much steel off too quickly. You don't really have that much control. You can use it, but it just runs too fast. It's too aggressive. And then you have a coarse wheel and a fine wheel. The coarse wheel is for shaping your tool, putting the proper profile on it, and then once you get the profile on, then you use the fine wheel to put the edge back on. sharpen it. And on mine, I don't know what the grits are on this one, but on mine I've got a 46 here and a 80 over here. And these are the wheels that come with, you don't want the old gray wheels, you want their silicon carbide, I think it is, the gray wheels, that the regular old grinder that runs at 3,600 RPMs, whatever. The silicon carbide is not very friendly to high-speed steel. So you want to have the friable aluminum oxide wheels. Now, this lathe came this way with these wheels on it. That one I got from Lowe's, and it had the gray wheels on it, and I put the Norton 3X wheels that are available out here that are friable aluminum oxide wheels.
Hey, Dan, explain what friable means.
Well, as you're grinding, well, if you got the old gray ones, you'd be grinding on it, and the particles don't break off; they just get dull. So you have to dress this one too, but it glazes over and the stuff gets embedded into the wheel. Well, the friable, as you're using it, particles are breaking off and renewing the points. Now it'll still get metal embedded in the stone, and you need to use a diamond dresser to resurface, clean up the face. So you have a diamond dresser tool. It's got it's got diamonds embedded into the face of that, and just to reshape the wheel and to flatten it.
Those come in different grades as far as you try one and the diamonds
Well,
are gone.
I don't know that it is. This one is just flat. There's other ones that just has a point on it that you run it back and forth across the wheel with a point, a diamond point. But I don't know if there's...
The old style with the carbide.
With the wheels?
Yeah.
Well, I think that'd probably be pretty aggressive. This is a softer material. They'd probably really chew an aluminum oxide wheel up.
Yeah,
But you want your wheels to be balanced, and then to just dress it, you just hold it in line and just lightly go like that, and that re-cleans that wheel up, takes off the particles you got embedded in there, and just touches it up and re-establishes the cutting edge a bit.
Don't they have those wheels also with diamond? Didn't I see?
Well, yeah, there's well, I don't know if they're diamond. They're out here. They're much more expensive. These wheels were about $50 a piece. There's ones out here called CBN, Cuban zirconium, Cuban boron zirconium, or I don't know, some CBN anyway. Well, it's a machine steel hub that runs very true, and then it's got particles. I don't know if the diamonds or what embedded in the surface. And this wheel here, they come with the shaft on the grinder is 5/8. Well, the wheels cut a hole with a 1-inch hole. Well, they give you these 3 or 4 plastic bushings you just stick in there, and the plastic bushings got slop in it. And I fussed with that for several days trying to get those wheels balanced. Well, I've got the one-way wheel balancing system, which is machined hubs that goes in your 1-inch hole, and then it's got a 5/8-inch hole in that hub to put on here. And that's why that runs so true, is because I've got those one-way hubs on there. Well, if you get the CBN, you don't have that problem. So starting off here, I got $100 in the wheels. I got about, I think it was $70 in the balancing system. So I got $170 there.
Plus a grinder.
Well, no, you're going to have the grinder anyway. Even if you get CBN, you still have to have the grinder. But if I'm starting out now, knowing what I know now, I may go, instead of buying these wheels, I may buy the CBN. I don't have to buy, this diamond dresser, it was $30. So there's another, when you get the CBN wheels, you don't have to dress them. So there's $30 here, $70 for the balancing system, $100 for the wheels, so there's $200. I could spend another $100 and got 2 CBN wheels.
And the one-way system?
Well, that's what I'm saying, $70 for the balancing, $30 for this, $100 for the wheels is $200. I could have spent $300 and got 2 CBN wheels.
What's the longevity of the CBN?
I don't know if people know yet. They haven't been out that long. I don't know. But Mike Peace has got one. He says, it just runs so incredibly smooth. It's balanced and it fits on and you don't have the balancing problem. Yes?
Dan, anybody starting out like I did when you had no grinding system and starting out from scratch, I actually purchased the Sorby system.
I've seen that.
Actually, in the long run, I think it's a little less expensive, though it's not a cheap piece of equipment or inexpensive piece of equipment. But I think it takes a lot less finesse, and you don't have all of the maintenance and replacing wheels. And
Yeah.
a belt's $12.
Yeah, that's what he's,
And it's much, you get a flat ground instead of a hollow ground, which I prefer. But to me, it's just a lot easier to use than these. You don't have to have the learning curve is much, much less.
well, in case you're not aware of what I was talking about, the Sorby system is a belt sander. And it's surprising, it's not very big, but it's got the belt angles up, you can tilt it up like this to get it in a comfortable position, and it just, like I say, it's belts. Where this is, you buy a wheel, it's got a 46 and an 80. Well, I'm stuck with those grits. Well, on the Sorby, it's got belts, and their belts are $12 a piece. I think they're Trizac belts, I believe.
You can get ceramic, you can get oxide. Oxide.
But so it's very easy to change the belt to get whatever grit you want for different applications, and they're not that expensive. And the unit itself is right around $500.
You don't have to worry about
Yeah.
flattening it, but you have a pattern.
Yeah.
Pattern on the back
Right.
that stays flat.
And then another option is the Tormek out here. I went up and got a Tormek, and I use the Tormek a lot for certain things. But the Tormek is good too, but you're
The one
talking.
you were just talking about, I spent about 2 hours chatting with that guy at the woodworking show last year. And it appears that a novice with that tool could do it.
Have you ever seen a salesperson doing demonstrations that didn't make it look like it was a novice could do? But that same guy, a year ago, he was the one doing Tormek demonstrations.
Oh.
Yeah.
He knows about grinding.
Yeah. But I stopped and talked to him last year at the wood show, and he said, oh yeah, this is much better than the Tormek system. But yeah, it does look interesting, just the fact that you can change the grits okay. Okay, I didn't really go over this. The V, we have the two different attachments. So we have the mounting bases here that hold different attachments. We have the platform that you can use for doing scrapers and the conventional type grind on a bowl gouge and parting tools. And then the V-arm over here that you can use, either you can put the handle and the tool here like that and do the spindle roughing gouge, various things like that. And then also for the fingernail or the fingernail type profile that's on some of the gouges, you put that in the pocket, put your tool in here, and then you rotate it around. That's what gives you just swept back wings, is using the tool here. So those are the accessories that come with that sharpening system. And I won't go into, I'll probably end up sharpening at least one tool today if I get into doing the little bowl. But I guess about 6 months ago I did a demo in here, it was just strictly on grind sharpening. And it's been put on YouTube. If you just search for my name, YouTube, you'll find it. But the name of is titled 2013-06-13 Sharpening Turning Tools by Dan Douthart. So if you have any questions on that, but look at the video, but I won't really go into so much on actually sharpening. Okay, I've already touched on holding material on the lathe. Now also on this, Mike Peace did a demo, hour and a half demo or whatever, that's on YouTube, that it was strictly on holding stuff on the lathe. So I'm not really going to go into a lot of detail on that, but that's on, again, if you search for Mike Peace in YouTube, you'll find that, but its title is 01-1912 Chucking Wood by Mike Peace. But I've already touched on some of the fixtures that we have, but there's two different methods, two different orientations of putting wood on the lathe.
Dan, explain your paper bag.
Well, this is very wet wood. In fact, it was just cut down a week or so ago. So it's Bradford pear. And if you leave it out and specifically out in the hot, in the heat, we haven't had a lot of heat lately, but it'll crack. It'll start drying and cracking. Well, you put it in the bag, it makes a little environment in there, and it just controls the drying, and it doesn't dry out so quickly and crack. So this is a piece of wood that was cut. You obviously see the tree was growing that way. Well, this was cut out of another piece like that. So the grain is going this way on the wood. Well, this is called spindle turning, or what was the other ones? It was just called spindle turning. So you mark the center. Some people just go like this. I prefer using this tool here, but you just mark the center. And if it's perfectly square, all those lines should line up, but if it's not perfectly square, I go around and do it from each corner. You getting that? Okay. I'm going to use an awl and just put a little divot there in the center. So you put the points in there. Now this, as I say, this is the type of spur that comes with the lathe. This is called a steb center, Sorby steb center. With this one, you don't have to drive it in because these teeth are very sharp and they will just seat themselves. Okay, and that would be, the grain is running parallel with the bed of the lathe, and that's commonly referred to as spindle turning, with that orientation. And you'll typically always have, if you're doing between centers, between centers or spindle, that was the other term, it's called between centers or spindle turning. But you could also do it with a chuck. You could have a chuck over here holding this piece of wood out here. This being as long as that, you'd still want to have tailstock support, but you could have a short piece up here in the chuck and still be doing with the grain in line and still be called spindle turning even though it's being held in the chuck. Okay, so that's that orientation.
Anytime the grain is running long ways, it's called spindle.
Right, spindle. And the other orientation is with where the grain is running crossways. Now we could do this with a faceplate. Again, we could have taken this faceplate, put screws in there, and screwed it on like that with screws, and put it on the lathe. But it's just so much more flexible to use a chuck. The chucks come with a drive spur or a worm screw. So a worm screw. You can also get chucks that's just a screw chuck. But what that allows me to do is I've drilled a hole in here, the proper size for that screw. I can screw that on to there and provide support. And now with this, I'd probably still use tailstock support until I get it round. Then once I get it round, I could take the tailstock out of the way and have full access to be able to turn. So with faceplate turning, the grain is running perpendicular to the bed of the lathe. Perpendicular like this. That's faceplate turning. Oh, well, yeah, I went ahead, I jumped right across that. Before I got into holding chuck, I wanted to go. Some other accessories that other recommended accessories that you might want to have is a Jacobs chuck that allows you to do boring. You can either, number 2 Morse taper, you can either put the chuck over here in the headstock and hold the wood here with the tailstock and force it in, or you can put it in the tailstock and drive it into the turning piece of material. And then the other one was calipers. For measuring, you need a set of calipers to be able to set diameters and measure stuff. Oh, why did I get down there? I'll show you one. We'll use the ones with the points on for marking my diameter. I'm going to I put a spigot on for the chuck. I'll use that to mark the diameter of my spigot. And then when I'm doing spindle turning, if I want to go down to specific diameters, I use this type of caliper. And these calipers typically come with fairly sharp points on there. Well, you want to round those points over so that it will just slide on the wood as you're measuring the diameter instead of digging in. But those are two other accessories that you really need to have. And then chucks. We'll go ahead and do the chucks now. Get to that one. Put this a little bit like that. Okay, here's some chucks. This is an easy wood chuck that's available out here. It's only been out a short while. This has some real nice features. It's got a quick adjustment. You can, when you put it on there, if you want to quickly move the jaws, you can just rotate this wheel here, and you can quickly move the jaws instead of sitting here with the crank and cranking that forever. It's got most chucks have screws that you can replace the jaws, but you got to sit there and go take 8 screws out. Well, with this one, it has a hole here that you put. It comes with a tool. You push down there and it releases that, and the jaw will just slide out. So it's very quickly to change the chucks or change the jaws on the chuck. However, the drawback is it's $400.
That does not include all the
Huh?
That does not include all the jaws.
That's one jaw, one set of jaws. And the jaws for this, because they got more stuff on them, they're $70, $80 a piece. Where the jaws for these other chucks are in the $40 range.
There's an old saying in the tool world, the remembrance of quality lives on long after price is forgotten.
Yep. Yeah, you do that. You appreciate the quality and you forget how much you paid for it.
That's right.
Then the next one down is they're very close in similar. This is Jimmy's Vicmark chuck. This is made in Australia. It's a very durable chuck. You watch videos. Professional turners, you'll often see that they're using a Vicmark chuck. It's sealed, so you don't get the dust inside of it. It has the key, same as on the Easy Wood tool. It uses a hex type key to open and close the jaws. There's no quick thing on it. You got to sit there and crank it. If you got to move the jaws a long ways, you got to sit there and crank it. This has a large variety of jaws, and that'd be if I'm looking at buying a chuck, one of the first things I'd look at is what kind of a range of jaws do they have available. When you buy a chuck, it typically comes with what's called 50 millimeter jaws. This is a number 2 or 50 millimeter, meaning it's about 2 inches. And what that means is that when these jaws are cut, they're all one solid piece, and it's machined. This is machined round in a solid piece, and they come back and cut it in 4 pieces. So 2 inches is the optimum diameter to be gripping inside with a 2 millimeter or 50 millimeter or the 2-inch jaws.
So you're buying 2 or 3 chucks, you buy different jaws,
Right.
so you get different sizes.
Yep.
Oh, no, you just buy a bunch of chucks.
Unless you're like Rob.
But then after you
If you hate
then after you do that for a while, you get so that's a pain in the butt changing 8 screws when I want to change. So you buy another chuck for another set of jaws. So that's Vicmark. This one is a one-way Talon. These I looked in another catalog last night, and they're both right around $200 range for these 2 chucks. But this is one-way, made in Canada. It comes with a fairly good number of jaws, but the Vicmark has a bigger range selection of jaws than what the Talon does. And I've had some demonstrators. They say this worm screw is the best there is in the one way. It's because of the beefiness of it. And
That screw is removable?
yes.
Okay.
In fact, I'll show you. And this comes with this type of key. There's a hole there's a hole down in there. You put the drive pin into, and then the cogs here match up on the teeth, the gears inside of there. So it matches up on there. Of course, now I'm not going to be able to get it off from there.
It appears you have a lot of wear on that piece right there, like you do on the key that you use on your drill press. If you don't put it all the way in.
Yeah. If you don't put it all the way in, you'll screw it up. Okay, so that's the worm screw. that comes with the one-way. And it's got the indentations here that goes down and fits in the base of the jaw. That you put it in there so that fits in there and that it doesn't turn. It's locked in there. So that's the one-way. And the next one, this is Nova, Techna Tools, Nova. This is a Nova G3 chuck. And again, this is the 50 millimeter jaws. These are 50 millimeter jaws. It has a key. This chuck is about $200, and you can just look at the difference. This is about $150 for this chuck. You can just look at the stuff fittings and see that this is a bit more heavy than what this is. But this is a very, very, very usable chuck. The same sort of thing. It's got the hole that the pin fits into, and then it's got the gears down there. And all these chucks here, what I'm thinking of, all these chucks come with an insert that you buy to match the threads on your spindle. That's an additional cost. So this is an insert for the Nova chuck is an insert. This is a 1-inch thread to thread on that spindle. I've got the insert in here that goes on this, so I can easily switch the chuck. If I start out with that lathe there, with this one, I just buy another insert and I can use the chuck over here. Or I can use a spindle adapter. If I've got my chuck with 1-inch threads on there, I can just have a spindle adapter and still be able to use that chuck on here. So this one screws in.
I said set aside about 10,000 to let it go.
Well, I'm saying the lathe is the cheap part.
But it doesn't have blades that keep breaking.
You know, it sounds like,
This is the one-way insert, and it's just has a taper on it, and it's held in by 3 screws. It's held in by 3 screws, and then when you want to take it out, you take the screws out and you put them in this hole here, and those are jack screws. They'll just pull that taper out of the insert, so it's very easy to change. So that's when you're buying these chucks, that's an additional thing that's about $25 for the insert. Another option is this is another Techna Tools chuck. This is called the Nova chuck. This one doesn't require an insert. It's hard threaded for 1 inch for this spindle over here. It's machined right into the body of the chuck. I still use this chuck over here using my spindle adapter. This chuck comes with Tommy bars. I'm going to close some of these drawers here. Now, when I first started turning, I was told you never want to buy one of these chucks. You don't want to buy a chuck that has Tommy bars because you need to have 3 hands to use it. Well, I watched videos by Cindy Drosia. I don't know if you know Cindy Drosia. She's a very well-known spindle turning, makes real elaborate, delicate finials. I saw Richard Raffin using one. He does bowls. But you got pins, you got holes around here that you put the Tommy bars into, and that controls the opening and closing. Well, this chuck here is made north of the equator, and you turn it that way to close. This one's made south of the equator, and you turn it that way to close. Okay? This one, all I got to remember is that ring, it goes that way to tighten, this way to loosen. Okay? So people say, well, you need 3 hands. You got to have hands here, you got 2 hands for that. Well, to put the piece in there, you hold it in like this. If you go around here and look, there's a hole there and a hole there. I want to tighten that up. I've got my piece held here like that. I go like that, and I go like that, and it's tight. If I want to loosen it, I come back around and find I need to run that ring that way. I put a hole there, and I go like that and loosen it. That chuck is about $100.
my chuck.
And another thing I like about the Nova chucks is you'll frequently see the Nova chucks on sale. I don't know if I've ever seen these chucks on sale. Or well, that chuck they had that marked down $50. The Easy Wood chuck, the show is marked down $50, but typically you don't see those on sale. The Nova chucks you do see on sale.
See those advertised all the time with the sale of the lathe.
Yeah, at the time when I bought the Delta lathe, Stone Mountain Power Tools was selling that lathe with this chuck. Well, I got that lathe here, and I got a set of turning tools with it. So they did, yeah.
Which chucks do you use the most for what you do?
I use these. I use all three of them really, but the most ones I use is these, the Nova chucks. Another thing I like about the Nova chucks, they've got a fairly good range of accessories, but Robert Sorby in England makes his own chuck. The jaws on the Sorby chuck jaws and the Nova chuck jaws are interchangeable. In fact, this is a set of 35 millimeter Sorby jaws. That's for the Sorby chuck, but they're completely interchangeable between Nova and Sorby. So you got a huge range of the jaws in between Sorby and Nova that you can get for the Nova chuck. And another benefit, the Vic Mark and the One Way, this is the smaller of their line, except well they both have this type of chuck with the Tommy bars, but this is the smaller of the line that uses a key. If you buy jaws for this chuck and then decide later I need to get a bigger chuck, you got to buy different jaws because the jaws for this chuck don't fit the big chuck.
Well, that's another question. Is all of this stuff proprietary?
Yeah, these jaws don't fit here, and these jaws don't fit there. These don't fit there. Right? However, the Nova and the Sorby are interchangeable, and the jaws. This is the Nova chuck. This is the G3 chuck. The next one up is the Supernova chuck. The jaws, any jaws work on any of the three chucks.
Dan, you might mention that commonly the ones that come with all of those chucks are dovetail.
Yeah, well, that's not, this is a true dovetail chuck here. I don't know if we're going to be able to see it on the camera or not, but you can definitely see the outside is tapered in a dovetail shape. Well, the inside of the jaw is also tapered in a dovetail shape. Yeah, there you can see it there. See that inside edge there is also dovetailed. The one-way jaws are called profiled. They're straight, but they got these serrations on the inside. However, on the outside, it's still got one ring of those serrations, but it does have a dovetail there. On this one, this is the Nova jaws. The outside is dovetailed, and the inside, the very short, about 1/8 of an inch. You can get that. About 1/8 of an inch bit there is got a dovetail on it. And then farther down is straight. So you have to be aware of when you're making your tenon, you just need to be aware of what chuck you're going to be using. So you either make your tenon straight for this one, or dovetail for this one, or just a tiny little cut for this one.